Okay, thank you everybody for being here. Today is Tuesday, August 19th, 2025, and this is the Cottonwood Heights City Council work session. So we're going to get our meeting started by doing a review of our business meeting for tonight. Before I do that, let me welcome to his first meeting, right?
Yes.
Chip Spunk is our
Yeah,
new
thank
Community
you.
and Economic Development Director. But we see you're wearing a tie even, you might set a standard here that's not
I'm used to
acceptable.
wearing ties to council, so could we have that discussion with him now? Get that over with.
We only allow attorneys to wear ties.
Okay.
Just kidding.
I didn't know it was optional. Creature of habit, but noted. Thank you, Mayor.
That's okay, yeah, welcome, and we're gonna welcome you here by asking you to lead the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. You okay with that?
Yeah.
So have you ever done that before? In a meeting?
Yeah.
setting? Okay, good. So I'm good.
Comes with a 2-minute speech.
Oh, that, yeah.
Why I love America.
There you go.
Great. So tonight we have our city council committee reports that we'll report on, and then we'll move to a citizen comment period. Item 5 is cool. We are going to get the opportunity to recognize a great citizen of Cottonwood Heights. It's Carol Woodside. So she's leading the historic committee. So we've got a recognition that I'll read, and then we've got some flowers that we'll give her and maybe do some pictures. So we're excited for that. Then we have our honorable Public Works Director, Matt Phipp, is going to do a quarterly report for us, which is a standing quarterly
We're
report.
having stands.
I'm gonna say stand-up routine or something. Okay.
And then we'll get to our legislative item. And we have 5 of them. And so once again, item 7.1, 7.2 and 7.3 are back on the docket. They've been there for a couple of meetings, but I think we're going to be ready to go. So Jim, did you want to, or did you probably,
I
do
can.
you want to give a little bit of background of?
I think Jim just met the applicant right now, so.
Yeah, but we talked on the phone an hour ago.
Adam
Nash is
is here,
Yeah.
if you have questions for him, but in going back and looking at the project, he is in process of acquiring the access easement to the east. So he is now in agreement with everything that was in the original development agreement. We're back to the original, and I don't know if we even need to do a presentation during the meeting or not, since it's the continued item.
Okay.
There are no changes, correct, Adam? What?
So just a reminder, 7.1 is approving the general plan amendment that needs to take place. And then item 7.2 is approving the rezone to the R28. And then item 7.3 is approving the development agreement that Gary just referenced. So any questions from the council on item 7.1, 7.2, or 7.3?
No.
Okay, good. Item 7.4, consideration of resolution 2025-62, approving disposal of unclaimed property or former evidence. And Chief, I think this is what you were talking about last week, right? Or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me. Yeah, so I'll more appropriately speak that matter now because it's actually on the agenda. So these are items in evidence that were seized in criminal actions and are no longer needed for any court purposes. Sometimes they're surrendered, sometimes they're found properly. We try our best to locate the owners of the property. Otherwise, they're ordered by the court to be disposed of or sold or destroyed, or can't locate responsible party, or no longer the person is convicted, so they can't own a firearm any longer. Under all those circumstances, the cases or the weapons are eligible for disposal. So what we are asking is for us to be allowed to destroy some of those weapons, and the quality ones we sell to weapons dealers. And Ms. Burrell asked the question about FFLs. So if I can speak just quickly to that. The city, because we're a governmental agency, is not required to have an FFL. So we surrender those vehicles and transfer them to licensed FFL dealers. And then they're responsible when they resell the weapons to do the Brady checks and the appropriate ATF forms to conclude or complete the transactions. So that's what you're considering tonight.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Questions? Thank you, Chief, for that item. And then the last legislative item anyway for tonight is item 7.5, consideration of resolution 2025-63, approving an interlocal cooperation agreement with Salt Lake County and Greater Salt Lake Municipal Services District for processing and transferring the pre-1 July 25th to July 2025 application for the Tabachi development. And Jared, anything you want to add? I mean, it's mostly stuff.
Yeah, we met with the district prior to the Debauchee annexation going into effect, and we just worked it out with them that anything they had in prior to that July 1st date, they would carry through and do all the inspections and bonding and everything for those permits, and everything after that would be us. So this agreement for that.
Questions? Okay, and then the last item is our approval of our consent calendar, which is the minutes from our city council work session and business meeting for August 5th. 2025. Back to our work session agenda, item 3, and we'll move to item A under 3, which is a planning department land use amendment and rezone at 3425 East Bengal Boulevard. So Jim, I think you're gonna lead us in this, right?
Yes, pull it up here and share my screen. All right, so got a rezone request, and the council has seen this before also, a few meetings ago. So got a request from an applicant to do a general plan map amendment and a rezone at the property at 3425 East Bengal Boulevard. You can see it on the screen here. The request is to rezone that to residential multifamily and to change the general plan designation also to residential multifamily. So the existing general plan designation is neighborhood commercial. The current owner has said they've been unsuccessful in finding potential tenants or developers to use it as a commercial property. They've also heard from the area that commercial may not be as well received as residential would be in this area, given that most of the north side of Bengal Boulevard is already residential. So changing it to residential medium density would help align it with what's in that area now. And then as far as zoning goes, the current zoning is neighborhood commercial. Again, same story. It would be rezoned to residential multifamily. So this is an aerial of the property. It was formerly a bank. You can see that accessed off Bengal Boulevard. The applicant is proposing with the rezone to develop it for townhouses. This is a concept site plan that he shared with us last week. There would be 6 units that would be accessed off of the Oak Shadow Circle on the east here. There's a couple of renderings here. This would be the fronts of the buildings, so facing west, fronting on Oak Shadow. And then this would be the rear of the project that would be facing the existing church building in that area. So this did go to the planning commission and they recommended approval of both requests. And we're coming to you today to see if there's any questions or items you'd like to discuss further.
Do you think 6 will fit with double garages? You look at that.
Yeah, so these are proposed to be 20-foot wide garages, so that would technically be a 2-car garage. It's pretty tight. Those are things that we'd have to look through with the stairs that are shown. So here you can see, we'd have to make sure that this is wide enough to accommodate the entrance as well as the garage.
Well, if No,
Did that
please.
answer your question? So, having, met with my constituents on this project. And this actually was my brainchild, although, I think that it, is something that they would like the council to consider. And that is, instead of the driveways fronting onto Oak Shadow, the consideration for having some kind of an alleyway in the back whereby the vehicles could be entering and leaving the backside of these properties instead of having all these garages front out onto Oak Shadow. The benefits of that could be that less, when it comes to their trash cans and things of that nature, that they would not be impacting Oak Shadow. Also, the consideration that the backside of this backs onto the parking lot of the LDS church. And if there was a way to give a special, make a development agreement whereby there is a little extra setback against this resident here, so more setback space here, and then tighten up the amount of setback against, again, a parking lot. This might help to make this residential, multi-use residential more palatable to the S1 folks in that neighborhood who thought that neighborhood commercial would be the zone out into the future, and are very disappointed that the council is thinking of changing the zone for this particular lot. Does that resonate with any of you? The idea of this not fronting onto, the garage is not fronting onto there, but having a narrow, some kind of alleyway.
My question is, the other residents have garages fronting.
And they are all on S1 lots.
And, the trash can thing, everybody's gotta do their curb on the trash can too. I don't know if there would be enough space to put something back there and how that would impact the front end of that property. That would be something to know about.
So Councilmember Rose brought up something that I am pretty interested in, which is I met with the applicant as well this week. Or last week rather, and he came and presented this design. So one of the things you notice in this concept, whether or not, however you look at access later, if you look, there's basically a 10-foot setback from the property line to the north. And then you've got 30 feet to the to the road. And so in this scenario, the lot closest to Fort Union, or to Bengal rather, would have a massive 30-foot side yard. And you can see on the north side that the lot would have a 10-foot side yard along with the back of the property as well. That didn't make a lot of sense to me. And so, our zoning doesn't allow us to just make individual exceptions. But what I did think is whether or not we wanted to perhaps send this back to the planning commission to look at a change, a text amendment change, to maybe say, hey, look, why wouldn't we allow 20 feet? We could increase the setback and basically at 20 feet from the house that I think that the neighbor to the north would really appreciate. And all we would be doing is bringing the front of the property 10 feet closer, which you can already see that there's homes that are closer to that anyway. And so my thought is that's probably the place to go, is let's fix, because we're not going to allow we can't allow an exception. Let's maybe work on the setback issue to this zone. Jim, anything you want to add to that? Any thoughts, or Jared?
I think you explained it well, that this reflects the current setbacks in the RM zone, so a minimum 10-foot side yard, a minimum 30-foot front yard, which would be here. So yeah, a text amendment would be an option to help increase this setback and decrease the front setback, but we would have to review that because that would be.
So even though, if I may, I just have a
Sure.
quick
So
question.
Councilmember Rowe, I don't know if you know,
Why calling this the front, isn't this the front?
That's that's
They-
a question I had too.
Yeah, so they would both be fronts because it's on a
Oh.
corner.
It's the corner street side or front, however you want to
Yeah.
refer to
So
it.
I also reached out to the developer and one of the things he mentioned, and Riley, I think you can probably talk about this. He said if we did a rear alley, as you're talking about, because it's more than 150 feet private road, he would also have to have an exit onto Oak Shadow Circle. And he'd have to have a radius big enough to have a hammerhead get in there.
Mhm.
And he doesn't think there's enough space on this lot for that. He did say that he would be willing to actually increase the width of the road there by 6 feet.
increase the width of what
Oak
road?
Shadow.
Oak
Yeah,
Shadows.
and move the townhomes
10
back.
feet, 6 feet.
Oh, I see.
But, and the other complication too. is
You
if
mean to
don't-
create park? I don't.
To create the extra space that, remember, Robert Farnsworth, when we met with him, said it's too narrow of a road. Even though every other road is as narrow as that, he said that it was gonna be, an access and a problem for coming in and out of the circle and parking. So
So you'd push basically everything to the,
Nathan Anderson
east
suggested
6
that
feet.
might be, something you could do. He also said that if you, how did he put it? That if you had to require a fire sprinkler for every single unit, it would increase the cost by $16,000 per door. So if you couldn't actually put the radius curve in and actually get the road, the alleyway to have that curve, then you'd have to require a sprinkler unit. So I think there's a lot of technical things probably beyond our council's knowledge and expertise about what that alleyway might look like. I personally don't think, after meeting with the residents, that it's in their best interest to keep it as neighborhood commercial, because I think they'd have something worse, a worse outcome than if we rezone to residential multifamily. I think it's probably the best case scenario. And what we can do, we can't just go to this and say, we're gonna make 2 single-family lots out of this. That's not in the purview of the council to do that. That'd have to be from the applicant. So based on the
neighborhood commercial could end up with 10 units and two commercial.
25% of
And yeah,
the total space has to be commercial on the. I think if these residents, let's say that this was an empty lot, and if we went to the residents and said, we're gonna put a bank there, I think they'd be just as angry. We didn't sign up to have a commercial, next to us, and so what we're looking for, I think, is the best solution. It's not optimal in any way because we're already built out city. What's the best solution for this particular lot? Is it to keep it as neighborhood commercial, or is it to rezone it and then look at what we could actually fit on that property? I love your idea of the setbacks, if we can make the change. If I'm that resident that's there on the north side, I don't want a 10-foot setback.
Be-
That's really close.
before I made any decision, I think that's where we would need to go, is see if we could make the change to the setbacks. But I like everything that you just said.
And then can we also get a little bit more information about what an alleyway would require, and if it's even feasible?
Yeah, we could ask the developer to explore that as an option. I know in meeting with him last week, one of the desirable elements of this configuration was that everyone would have a backyard for pets or kids or whoever to enjoy. So an alleyway would have, I
That's
mean,
highly
you'd have a
desirable.
front yard, but not necessarily a rear yard for private use. So we can certainly have them explore that as an option to see what that would look like. And then as far as the text amendment goes, if that's what the council would like to see, we can explore draft language. We would just need to ensure that the whatever amendments are proposed wouldn't negatively impact other areas of the city, because it would be an amendment to the RM zone in its entirety. So we'll have to explore draft language for how that could work here. It could be a burden if we say the minimum side setback is 20 feet, but there could be language that says the planning commission or council could require a larger setback if it's adjacent to single family homes, or we can try to think through some options to make it work for the whole city. But I think that's a good suggestion.
I think the appealing thing after talking to the developers, he was talking about a non-monetary HOA, which means that you don't have a common roof line from
Mhm.
beginning to end, and so they're all independent units. I think that reduces the burden to the particular owner to have to always deal with an HOA and assessment, unknown assessments, that they can, that's independent property, so in that respect, the yards are very appealing.
Yeah, I would not want them to lose the yards, because that's what we talk about here, is bringing community and people that want to live here and stay here. Bring a community.
Well, yes and no. I think that that's arguable that the idea of bringing things out to the sidewalk creates walkability. You can still have your garden in the front and your porch in the front. And as it becomes less affordable for people to be able to have the lots they want, I think these kind of considerations can keep our city beautiful, walkable. I had a conversation with one of my constituents in Giverny. His lot is 1/10 of an acre. And we know that coming up here in the work session, we're going to be talking about the challenges going on in Giverny, where they gave him a teeny front yard and a teeny backyard. And there's a lot of disappointed people that live in Giverny because they haven't been able to realize that yard that you're talking about. They don't have the privacy, the grades have made it challenging. So I think as times change and we want to keep some level of affordability, the idea of the behind the house alleyways is a real great way to create, again, a real sense of nice walking and neighborliness in the front side. And then the back side is where you store your trash cans and you have your cars pulling in and out. That also is more walkable than driveways through all the sidewalks. Every time you have a driveway, that equals danger for pedestrians and cyclists.
My other concern too, and Chief can plug in here if you'd like, is whenever you have an alleyway, you have blind spots. And I worry about security in our communities. So that is something I always think about anytime I think about an alleyway. Where it's dark, it's unlit. Folks that may
This
just
is
be going
called-
out to dump their
It's
trash.
called motion sensor lights. People use that have alleys have motion sensor lights, and there's ways to mitigate those dangers.
So I think this is all a positive discussion. I would probably recommend that we punt what we're talking about now, and I would be willing to then reconsider once we've moved forward with the setback issue. Would that be acceptable to everybody
Yeah,
else?
I'd like to recommend it.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay. Councilmember Highland, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, Jim, let's do that. Let's and it sounds like, would you go to the planning first or come back to us with the recommended changes?
So a text amendment would have to go back to the planning commission for their review, and then I'll have to look back. It wouldn't necessarily change the recommendation for the rezone, because the site plan isn't really relevant to the rezone.
Right.
It kind of is, but the text amendment would go to them, and then we could bring all three proposals back, the text amendment, the rezone, and the general plan change
Okay.
for council's review.
Can we also get a determination about how many units can actually fit? Based on the setbacks we're talking about?
Sure.
We've all just been questioning whether there's really enough width for the sixth.
Yeah, and adjustments to the setbacks, if the setback against Bengal were decreased, then that could allow a little more space for wider driveways and things. So we'll work with the applicant to explore some of those options.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. We'll move on to item B under reports, which is an employee handbook training. So we've had our great records, culture and HR director, Barbara Huggins, working really hard since for quite a while actually on making updates and finding some things that we weren't doing correctly. So Barbara chastised us, I guess, for a little bit, and we're excited to hear what you've got to talk to us about.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. So this is the presentation that we're giving to all of the employees. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but you'll be getting the same training, and we'll be doing this every year. We'll do small update training or small updates to the handbook every year. So Tiffany is going to be passing out the acknowledgement form. So this is for all employees to acknowledge that they understand all of the policies in the handbook. We're gonna talk about sexual harassment in there. And then this goes in everybody's files for us to have, as well as the disclosure form. We're gonna talk about the Ethics Act. There also will be a training for all employees, elected officials, appointed, part-time, regular employees that will cover the state Ethics Act. So, and then we'll start doing the disclosure forms every January per the state law. So we'll just jump in. If you want the QR code on there, will take you straight to the employee handbook if you guys wanted it. So we just have encouraged the employees to pull up the handbook and bookmark it on their phones so they have it as a reference. So thank you to Shane and Jared and Robbie. So many of the department heads and employees all pitched in helping with this. So we have the handbook broken down into different sections, so it's easy reference for all of the employees. We start out talking about the history of Cottonwood Heights, so that employees are a little bit familiar with what the history of the city is that they work in, and that we're celebrating our 20th anniversary, which is exciting. And then we outline what our mission and values are. These are the same that we've had before, and that we hold all of the employees up to this standard to maintain these mission and values. And so the next is our employment policies, that we are an equal opportunity employer. So, and we have zero tolerance for any discrimination or harassment based on all of the protected classes under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, and encourage anyone to report issues to HR, their supervisor, or department heads, and that they should be free of fear of retaliation. So sexual harassment is something we also take very seriously in the city. It's the city's policy to regard sexual harassment as a very serious matter and to prohibit it in the workplace or among the workforce by any person or in any form. And so we prohibit any of the following behaviors: unwelcome sexual flirtations, advances, propositions, or touching, verbal or written abuse of a sexual nature, graphic verbal comments about an individual's body, sexually degrading words used to describe an individual, display in the workplace of sexually suggestive objects or pictures, or any other conduct of a sexual nature which is inappropriate for the workplace. So, and I have used this in trainings at the city I worked at before. The grandma filter is a great way for employees to remember and ask themselves if something's appropriate. If they could say it in front of their grandma, it's probably safe. If they can't say it in front of their grandma, probably leave it out of the
I think that's
workplace.
grandma, not grandpa, because my grandpa was
Grandpa's probably different. So we'll encourage the grandma filter. So medical examinations is another one. If anyone's in an accident, or our police officers, crossing guards, and public works have to have medical examinations. So we have now put the addresses of all of the locations they can go in the employee handbook, so it's easy reference for them. And then this just outlines our policy about employment of relatives. So no one can directly supervise a relative of theirs. So, and this is just in accordance with the Utah Code. And personnel files, all employees have personnel files as well as medical files that we keep separately to comply with HIPAA. And any employee is welcome to come look at their personnel file at any time. They just come in and let us know and we'll keep it. But we have all the files under lock and key. So termination of employment, we just encourage employees to provide us 2 weeks notice. It's not required, but we ask that they do. They're also offered an exit interview with us in HR. And that gives us some great feedback from employees. And then there'll be a separation form or a PAF for them to fill out when they leave. Job abandonment, just if someone does not show up to work, then they can be disciplined up to and including termination. And so we just ask in emergencies that employees will they'll have a representative contact their supervisor if they are unable to contact and say that they won't be at work that day. We've also now outlined what the paydays are so that employees will know when the paydays will be, and that if there's a third payday of the month, that will be the time that benefits are not taken out. So that's a quick reference for employees. And then we have been talking about our new work schedule with the 410s, that's our standard. We reminded them that this is a pilot program. And so they have to work between 7 and 6. We go into the fact that they get a paid lunch 4 days a week. If they are on the 5/8, then they get an unpaid lunch on that 5th day. So we've just outlined that if they are doing remote work, if they're on a 5/8 schedule, they can do 1 day a week, 2 with city manager approval, but it has to be seamless. The customer service must be exactly the same. If they're doing a video call, it must be professional. No one should be able to tell that they're working at home versus working in the office. So we've just outlined those expectations. We've gone over overtime pay. What that's like. Butlerville Days is a special premium pay code, so we've outlined that. And for police officers, their overtime starts after 80 hours, so it's based on 2 weeks. And for non-sworn employees, it's based on 40 hours, so 1 week. And if they are any employee of municipal government can be deemed a disaster worker in a disaster, so they can be eligible for overtime at that point if they're non-exempt employees. So this is where we just talk about the fact that we are committed to maintaining competitive pay ranges and pay wages. So we do regularly do salary surveys, trying to make sure that we are competitive. And then with the budget committee, we review what those pay ranges are and recommend changes as appropriate. And then we do pay for performance. So it's based on annual evaluations. So if someone is able to score well on their evaluation, then that will be reflected on the pay for the year. And if someone is maxed out on their pay range, then they can get a longevity bonus or a lump sum. But that is dependent on the approval of the budget by the city council. We've also outlined the holidays. So it's easy reference for employees so that they can see. We're now paying employees 10 hours of holiday now that we've gone to the 410 schedule. And so we've outlined what all of the holidays are for their reference.
Also remove the floating holiday.
We removed the floating holiday. So then we have decreased the non-sworn PTO accruals. So this just outlines, and we've taken down the maximum accrual that they can carry over. So this is just outlining what those accruals are each week so that they have an easy reference for them to refer to. And then the PTO cash out is at 50%. So this has changed. We had a vesting schedule before, but we've changed it. So it will be 50%. And that will be offered once a year for anyone who has at least 120 hours of leave. And then at separation, they'll get their PTO or vacation paid out at 100% unless they've worked at the city for less than a year, and then it's only 50%. And so we have implemented personal leave that is just a bank of leave that is use or lose as we decreased PTO. So this is just 80 hours of leave for non-sworn personnel that they can use within the calendar year. It's not paid out if they leave, but it is just to encourage work-life balance. Short-term medical leave is another program that we have started for non-sworn. Police get sick leave, so we've started short-term medical leave for non-sworn. They get 40 hours a year. They can bank up to 480 hours. It'll take them a while to get there, but that covers the full amount of time that someone would be on FMLA. So all non-sworn employees are given this time, but they have to qualify for FMLA in order to use short-term medical leave. So we've included the sworn vacation in here this year. Chief Russo was great to help with this. So, and police and appointed staff, their accrual, the chief and I discussed, we're going to change the appointed staff as 360 as the maximum accrual. So it matches non-sworn appointed employees. So this basically is the same as non-sworn, but they have vacation and they have sick, which is separate. So we've outlined for the sworn officers, basically that it's just that they need to use it when they're sick. And so that they're eligible to accrue 8 hours per month of sick leave, and they can accrue as much as they want. There's no maximum accrual for sick pay for officers. And and then sworn officers are able that use less than 32 hours of sick leave can convert some sick leave to vacation at the end of the year. And then if an employee actually retires from Cottonwood Heights, or if they're a post-retiree and they meet Medicare eligibility age, then they can get their sick leave paid out at up to 25%. So this is a benefit to the sworn employees. Any questions on any of that?
Is any of this, I know some of it has been either modified or certain new elements, but are any of these parts completely brand new to our employee
Yes,
handbook?
yes. So the personal leave, because we decreased PTO, we've created the personal leave, and the short-term medical leave is new. So yes, those are the two that are new.
A
Thank you.
lot of the language in the book is new as well, because our previous manual was just a human resources manual. This is actually an employee manual, so we've outlined a lot more policies and procedures in more detail for the employees to have and kind of know what they get, what their rights are, what everything comes with the job.
Well, it sounds like that was a lot of work and it took you taken us to the next level of sophistication. So thank you for this.
Barbara, because
We're excited. I'm excited. I think it'll be good. So then we cover the Americans with Disabilities Act. So just that our employees understand that if they do have any kind of disability at all, that they can come to Human Resources and we will work with them on the application process for an accommodation. So we want to make sure that they understand that we do comply with the ADA with the EEOC. The Pregnant Workers Fairness Act is new. This basically is protection that's very similar to ADA, but it is for any pregnant woman or any pregnancy related condition. So an employee can apply for an accommodation under the PWFA as well. So we go into detail in the handbook about that. FMLA, we also offer here, it's a federal requirement. If you have to work at the city for at least a year and work at least 1,250 hours in order to be eligible, but it's basically 12 weeks of job protected leave. So it's not another bank of paid leave, just means that your job is protected for 12 weeks. So this is where we really encourage employees to save up their paid leave because you never know if something could happen. So we just make sure that we outline what FMLA is so that they can understand the importance of that. And it's not only for themselves, but it is also to care for an immediate family member as well. Or a military member. If you have a military family member, you get 26 weeks rather than 12. And that non-sworn employees will be able to use their STML, officers will be able to use their sick leave. Bereavement leave, we did make a small change to this. So we are very supportive of anyone that has the death of a family member. And we also, miscarriage and stillbirth is now covered under a Utah code, and people are eligible for bereavement in those cases as well. So we have changed, so siblings, all levels of grandparents and grandchildren, you get up to 3 days of bereavement leave. If it's a spouse or domestic partner, parents or children, you get 1 week or 40 hours of bereavement.
Does that apply to the grandparents of your spouse,
Yes, so yes, including in-laws. Yes.
including in-laws?
Mhm.
Oh, I see. Sorry, I see
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So jury and witness leave, we do offer paid leave. They just have to sign over their jury check to the city, and we will offer paid leave for that. Military leave, we did make a small change with this. So there's up to 120 hours of paid military leave per year. And what we do is we take what their city pay is and what their military pay is. And if their military pay is lower, we will make them whole. So we'll pay the difference so that they're at 120% or 120 hours at 100%. That's what I read. Okay, so donation of leave, this basically just allows employees that sometimes they can have an emergency situation where they're out of leave, out of paid leave. And so a department head can offer for employees to give a donation of their leave. They donate their vacation or their PTO, only up to 10% of their total balance. And then it gets converted to either sick leave or short-term medical leave for the employee that is in need of it. So, and it's only allowed one time per illness or injury or FMLA approved condition. So this just outlines when an employee can actually take leave without pay. We discourage employees from taking leave without pay. That affects their URS eligibility. So we just outline what those circumstances are when they actually can have unpaid leave. And then we just basically outline the benefits.
Question on leave.
Yes,
What's our maternity leave and paternity leave policy?
we do not have maternity leave or paternity leave at
Falls
this.
under FMLA right now. We don't have a paid leave specifically for them.
We have talked about it.
We'll have a follow-up discussion about that later.
What is that?
That's great.
Yeah, maybe what are other cities doing?
It's starting very small. There's just a few cities that are doing it, but it's a hot topic right now. So paid family leave is what they call it. And it's different cities are experimenting with different things. So that is definitely something that Jared and I have talked about. So
And so how much time do they have unpaid? So you don't have paid, but what about unpaid?
So
Was that
under the
based on
Pregnant
FMLA?
Workers Fairness Act, you actually can have up to 9 months of unpaid leave. So, but with FMLA, it's 12 weeks. So, but I'm happy to have further discussion about it.
Yeah, not now, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we just outlined what our benefits are so that, and we do an open enrollment meeting every year, so employees go into detail on what all of their benefits are, but in the handbook, we just have summaries of what the benefits are. We're also starting a new wellness program that I'm very excited about. So we're starting a wellness council. So we have a representative from each department that will be part of that. And PEHP will be coming in and helping us kick off, but we'll have wellness challenges every month. And we're going to focus on a wide variety of areas of wellness. So we're going to have our first meeting next week. So we're excited for that.
You've mentioned another acronym. What was the acronym? PEHP?
PEHP is who we have our
Healthcare
benefits through.
Okay, do they have incentives for?
They do.
wellness program? Okay.
So we're really excited. So then we just outline what appropriate conduct is. We talk about the importance of everybody to accept their responsibilities and to behave respectfully towards themselves and others. And then we explained that on duty or off duty, your conduct reflects on the city. So consequently, you're encouraged to observe the highest standards of professionalism at all times so that employees understand they're always a representative. So, and then the guidelines, they have a duty to act lawfully, a duty of ethical conduct and loyalty to the city, a duty to promote work efficiency and morale, and duty of service to the general public. And then we have explanations for each in the handbook. So the State Ethics Act, so this is something that we'll provide training on every year. We'll be emailing out a link to a training in the next couple of weeks. So this applies to all elected and appointed officers, all regular, part-time, and seasonal employees. So this is prohibited with any sharing of confidential information about the city for personal or others' gain, using your position for personal benefit or special treatment, accepting gifts that could improperly influence you or reward official action, anything over $50 from anyone outside of the city, and then using city property for personal use without prior approval. So conflicts of interest, any situation where personal interest could influence official decisions or actions. And then we have a duty of loyalty, act in the city's best interests, not personal gain. We've passed out the disclosure form. We will be having this every January, so it will be sent out. But if you want to fill out the paper form, that's great. I also have a fillable PDF that I'm happy to email out to you. We wanted to just make sure if you wanted the paper form that you had that available as well. So this just goes through what the public disclosure is required annually. For elected officials, it's a little bit more detailed. So that you'll have a separate form from, but we will have all employees that will be filling out this disclosure forms every year. So, and if your circumstance changes, then you should file a sworn statement. It's basically an updated disclosure form that you would just submit to the city. Does anyone have any questions on that? I went through that pretty quick. Okay, so we cover whistleblowing, that it's important for all employees to understand that we encourage them to report any suspected waste of public funds, property, manpower, or violations of the law. However, we want employees to understand not to spread malicious or frivolous information. So if there is something that is wrong, we want them to report it, but just make sure that you have your facts straight so it's not damaging to anyone. And not to share any confidential information for personal use or gain. And that it is the responsibility of all employees to participate in any city investigations. Outside employment, everyone's primary role is their job to the city unless it's in otherwise stated in writing. Secondary jobs are permitted, but it must be approved from the department head. If the department head denies it, then they can appeal it to the city manager. Employment references, there is a new state law that was passed recently, so we are not allowed to share any information about an employment reference to other agencies. And the police department falls under a different code for background information. But unless we are a personal reference for someone, you can share that information, but it has to be expressly said that that person wants you as a personal reference, and then the city cannot be held liable. But if we do have an employee that shares information, even in a casual conversation about another employee, then the city can be liable. So we want to make sure employees
Does that
understand.
include whether or not they gave 2-week notice?
No, that would just be factual.
Okay.
So you can give dates of hire, and if they just ask that, you can't share that
So
information.
they gave notice, but you still can't talk about what kind of employee
Nope.
they were or anything.
Yeah, right.
You can just verify information, basically.
Yes. So then we just go over the main takeaways with the IT policy. Basically, city-owned approved devices, make sure that you're not using personal use on your devices unless it's approved. Use strong passwords, don't share your login, don't install software without IT. They're very careful. So we go in detail about all of the IT policies, and they're very detailed in the handbook. Email use. This is just to remind everybody that city email and devices are for city property, and whatever email you're using on a city device could be grammable, including our personal email. So they've just reminded us, make sure that you keep your personal stuff personal so that it cannot be grandma'd. So we go into that, we talk about workplace violence, that there's zero tolerance for workplace violence, and the importance of reporting anything if they're concerned about any of that. And then we talk about the complaint resolution procedure, which I'll go over in a minute. We talk about tobacco use. Tobacco and e-cigarettes are not allowed at the city. We go through our drug policy. We follow the Federal Drug-Free Workplace Act. So, and then we do go into how there can be reasonable suspicion that will require a drug test. So we just explain what those would be that would cause a trigger for an employee to be drug tested. And then workplace searches, just the importance of remembering that city property is subject to inspection. So just to remember that we are able to use city property, but to use it properly and not for illegal activity. We go over the importance of health and safety and the employee's responsibility to try and remain safe and to keep the city safe. So we outline what those safety practices are, and then what to do in the case of an emergency. And then conduct hazardous condition reporting and what to be aware of, and the important steps to take in case of an accident or a hazardous condition. We want to make sure that we're mitigating as much risk as we possibly can when it comes to accidents. City vehicles should only be for official use. Sworn police officers have limited personal use as directed by the chief. All employees that will be driving should have a valid Utah driver's license, and we do check the motor vehicle records periodically to make sure that everyone still does have a valid driver's license. So the employees that have personal use, they can get mileage reimbursement, and the city is not liable for when there's personal vehicle use. We encourage employees to use their safety belts. Talk about cell phone. This is basically city owned. Make sure that you're using it for city purposes. Supervisor and subordinate relationships, we talk about the city discourages romantic relationships between employees. And it is not allowed to have any kind of romantic relationship between a supervisor and a subordinate. If there is, they're supposed to notify their department head or the city manager in writing. The complaint resolution procedure, this basically just explains how they would file a complaint. We encourage them to discuss with the coworker that they're having an issue with first. If that's not possible, discuss it with the supervisor. If it's not resolved, then they can meet with their department head and meet with HR if it needs to be escalated from there. And that we take any kind of harassment or discrimination very seriously, and that will have to be investigated. And if there is any discipline, that's over 2 days of suspension or a demotion, or if they have been terminated, then they do have the right to appeal. And then we go through what the appeal process is. And that is it. So do you guys have any questions about all of that we went through really fast? Okay.
Kudos to Barbara and her team for putting this together, because I think what we discovered as we've been here is that a lot of things are interpreted differently in different departments. So this kind of pulled everything together. I think is going to put everybody on the same page so that we're treating everybody the same and all the employees are treated the same. So. And the information is a little more available, I think, than it was before for the employees, so.
No, I think the council's really appreciative of like Councilmember Burrell mentioned earlier, of your hard work and doing all of this to get us where we need to be. During your presentation, I kept thinking about The Office and Michael Scott trying to take over the meeting and do some of the things. If you watch The Office, they had some fun HRR type meetings, but
Yes.
and we can't, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
thank you. So,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
thank you. Okay. And so just to double check, so we need to get these back to you.
The disclosure forms, I can email. Would you all prefer them to be emailed?
Yeah,
Okay,
that would be
yes. If you'll just sign the acknowledgement form that I passed around that just says that you attended the training, the one that has the 2 boxes, if you'll just make sure that I get that.
Yeah, while we're here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be great.
okay. Perfect.
Thanks.
Okay. And we are gonna sign the conflict of interest and do that disclosure again because it didn't happen. in
Yes,
January.
so we'll send it out. Tiffany will actually be in charge of that, our city recorder, so she'll be starting to send that out in January.
If you look at it, it's very similar to your election when you ran for office. That's a very similar form. So, and we'll do that every January going forward.
Yep.
Great.
For the elected officials.
Okay, thank you. Item C under reports is listed as a short-term rental software discussion. So we've had some good information finally come to us. So Councilmember Highland, I'm gonna turn the time to you.
We didn't know if we have this good information coming to us, but it came to us a couple of hours ago. So the council, just kind of a quick reminder. We've talked about considering software implementation now so that we can get compliance of existing policy. And with that, then we would have a dashboard to look at a real time, the data maps to see where the hotspots are in our city that would inform future policy. And the council asked me to go back to Granicus and say, can you give us an estimate of how many unlicensed properties there are in our allowed zones? I'm happy to report that we now know that number, which is 140. And based on the report that I received from Sydney about the number of licensed, we have about between 86 and 90 that are licensed. That leaves us about 50 that we could bring into compliance. And as we discussed last time, at $520 per new license, that's $25,000 plus, and an annual subscription to Granicus would cost us $22,600 something. And so just by bringing in to compliance what can be brought into compliance, we can cover those costs. So to make this a shorter discussion, or you certainly are welcome to ask questions, I would just like to ask the council if we could go ahead with a budget amendment so that we can get software purchased and implemented, at least an annual license that would be in place hopefully by ski season. I know it would be pretty aggressive since it's already mid-August to do that, but I would like to not kick this can down the road too much further so that we could actually have time to evaluate over a year's time what the software could do for us. And I know you all attended the demo. I hope that kind of gave you a little bit of a flavor, although kind of sort of towards the end, didn't we get a chance to look at the 24/7 compliance, or not, sorry, hotline, and how you can report nuisances online as well as call, and how those are responded to. I just think the software is probably going to make it easier for staff to be able to coordinate with other departments and to really be able to chase down where these STRs are, so that when police are responding to a nuisance call, you know if it's an STR or not. Right now, I understand that you don't. There's a lot of it of benefit.
I
Yeah,
also,
discussion.
I was just interested if Jim Spung had any thoughts on this in particular to add, since we've been I don't know if you've had a chance to turn your attention to this, but
Just to get caught up on previous discussions, but
yeah.
Did Taylorsville have? STR?
so Taylorsville didn't allow them anywhere. So it was, I think the council just didn't want to get into it, so they just said they're not allowed.
Well, we do
So-
have these a little different dynamics being so close to the
Right.
resort, so I just
Yeah.
thought in case you had a particular observation, but and by the way, I haven't even had a chance to meet you or welcome you to the city, so great to have you here at the table.
Thank you.
Well, I've expressed that I'm very interested in compliance and getting in enforcement. So if this would help us to get those, especially who are operating in currently allowed zones, I'd be in favor of moving forward with the software, doing a budget amendment and moving forward with that. But let me see how the rest of you
Yeah,
go.
and I agree, it being a wash, that was my concern, is the budgetary impact. I still have that concern about staff and who's gonna be monitoring this, how much time that's gonna take. I think that's something we have to look at, but where we are right now, I'm a lot more comfortable with moving forward.
Well, and while we know there's no guarantee that we'll out of the 140, will we see licenses from 10, from 50, from 100, 120? But I really like the idea that we're only committing to 1 year at this point. And so it's not like this is a $22,000 expenditure year in and year over a big contract, series of years. And I also am very interested in giving those in the zones a chance to come into compliance. And there's just a myriad of benefits to having this operate legally. So I'm right there with all of you. I'm very appreciative of all the time and effort that you have taken, Councilmember Highland, to advance this and to offer every opportunity to learn thoroughly and deeply about this subject and how it can affect Conlin Heights. So thank you.
I think we'll also see additional revenue from TRT that's not being remitted.
Yes,
And so I think beyond just being a wash, it may be hopefully a budget plus, not a
Yes.
huge amount, but I don't see it being drained from the budget.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So thank you for all of the input and the feedback, and we don't need an RFP process, right, Jared? It's just something we can go to Granicus and.
Yeah, I think they're on state contract. I'll have Scott look into it for sure, but
And they are.
Thank you.
I'll have Scott clear that.
But brief today.
Thank you.
Great.
So Tiffany, are you ready? That's fine.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Hannan. Okay, so item D is under staff reports is listed as a arts district discussion. So you might be wondering what I want to talk about. And I'm excited to let you know what I do want to talk about. So Jared's got some pictures that I pulled.
I still have
But-
a screen from you, Tiffany.
Yes,
So
Sorry.
sorry about that.
let me start off with first, when Councilmember Burrell and I traveled to Carmel, Indiana. And we toured their city, we toured some of the things that they do. This is a picture of one of the streets that we walked down. And I was so impressed with, first off, the signage and the pillars that let you know you were in a different part of town. You were in a town that Carmel was dedicating and honoring art and design and I mean, it was just distinct that you were in a different type of place as soon as you entered onto that street, even though it did the same type of thing. And one of the things that I'm gonna talk about is what that actually ended up spurring business and the city to do later. So, but being there, that had a really big effect on me. The other thing that I did that affected me was I went to a placemaking conference, if you remember. Maybe, I don't know if you all remember, it might have been before you, Suzanne, but it was in Arkansas, and it was literally a conference on placemaking. And it talked about the districts and some of the things that a city could do to create places that people want to go, and that's to give them a bit of an identity. You know, that's been something I've talked about a lot with the town center, that we're working to create something that creates an identity for our city. So anyway, Jared, if you'll scroll a little bit, some of these are just example of pictures of what Carmel did in on this street. One of the things that I loved was look what they did with their lamp posts. So they had a unique design, and they created these flower that hung from the lamp post, that created beauty and you're like I said, a sense of being somewhere. That person in the red is actually a what would we call that?
Little, yeah, I think it was a
Yeah.
copper, yeah.
Copper statue that they painted, and it's just the
Yeah.
people of doing what they do in cities, walking and shopping. There were pictures of people with a dog on a leash, pictures of people on sitting on benches. That's actually a picture of just people on that street. It brought people to this area, and you can see the beauty of the planters again. And the other thing that it did, and this is why I wanted to start this discussion, was it actually started, when they defined what they wanted the art district to do, guess what came? Galleries, came and rented spaces and decided this would be a great place to sell their art. And so, you can see the blue sign, it's called the Carmel Gallery and Gifts. And they sold trinkets. I think Councilmember Bro brought me a shirt out of that store, if I remember right. Is that right?
It's fun, yeah.
Anyway, so hopefully that tells you a little bit of encompasses of why that experience affected me. That's actually a statue as well of a little girl holding on to a stop sign on that street. So as I thought about it, there's a couple other pictures and these are just of signs letting people know that they're in a different space. They're in an art or culture space. This is just of the city, and that's how they used the sign to let them know that this is the city of Columbia that did something different. They used actually a light post or a similar light type of pole to let people know that they were in an arts district that they wanted. So anyway, so as I thought about this, I'm like, man, if our great people who founded or started creating this area would have known that we were going to turn into the city of Cottonwood Heights, it would have been easier, but they didn't. And so now we live in this place that is already built out in many respects. So I started thinking, where could we do something like this? Could we find a place that we just get started and define an arts district in Cottonwood Heights? Is that possible? So one of the things I did is I did a lot of driving around and thinking about it. Fort Union Boulevard is just so busy. I didn't know, if we could ever do something like that. I told my idea to our arts council chair, Lara Garcia, and you can imagine her response was, oh my gosh, that would be awesome. We would love to be a part and to be a partner in doing something with that. So then I thought about a place, and one of the things that would have to happen if we did something like this would be people would have to slow down. When you can see the cars on that street, there's just single lanes going both ways, but they don't go fast. They park on the side of the road. And so I started thinking about Bengal Boulevard, literally starting from City Hall. So if you've ever walked from City Hall up to Rooted, there's already murals at Rooted. I contacted the school district and the rec center because they own a lot of land, the land on the north side of the road between there. There's a couple of LDS churches as well. But so I said, what if we expanded, a sidewalk, did kind of a paver or something that kind of announced you were in a different place than you thought than just a regular place. And could we put benches and maybe build a wall that we did murals, or we invited people to do art pieces. And even though this is, on a small level, in my mind, this would I thought it was a way to spur something. I was gonna mention when we were in Carmel, Mayor Brainerd, who literally spent a couple days with us and walked around their entire city, talked about just getting started is how you spur change and ideas is just getting started. So anyway, one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this to you is I know that we're not in a position financially to spend a whole lot of money to do this. We give our arts council a budget, but we talked about in our retreat as well, creating a 50, I always
501c3.
501(c)(3). Say that fast. 501(c)(3). Foundation, where we could solicit donations. And one of the problems with what we had talked about at the retreat was okay, well then how are you deciding? And there were so many different things that we were trying to maybe accomplish. But if we created a 501(c)(3) specific to art, and solicited donations, we could then use that money to accomplish something like what I'm talking about, creating, not using city resources, but using our arts council, working really, really closely with them, creating signage that announced maybe not as grandiose to begin, but signage to let people know they're in a different area. Maybe it would, by doing that, you'd be able to slow, I think people would be willing to travel at a slower speed, and just getting people to, want to come and visit. People that come to Cottonwood Heights, we have a sister city who wants to come and do things with us, and having them be able to walk down our what we call our arts district and see art. And we know that we have multiple residents that love to paint murals that have done that for us. We have a great leaf that we had a resident create that we put on the rock out in our what do we call that out there?
Plaza.
What do we call it?
Right here, the plaza, right?
Yeah. So anyway, so that was my thought. And so I wanted to bring that in front of you. I've had some conversations with like I said, with our arts council, with the chair of our arts council, and I've had conversations with some of the people that would have to cooperate, and the interest so far is there's a lot of interest. So I thought I'd maybe open it up for a discussion at the council to see what your thoughts are and whether or not you'd be willing to explore this with me. So Councilmember Barrow.
Well, I'm kind of beaming here because not only did I live this at the same time that I traveled there. One of the challenges, I will just have to say, for Eden Boulevard, beyond the obvious, 4-lane thoroughfare, is the gigantic transmission tower poles, which aesthetically, they're not to human scale. So to have some kind of feeling like this, I think you're on the right track to be thinking of, a more narrow street. And what's particularly attractive, that it just because this is catching me, I've never considered your idea, it's really fascinating, is if there are plots of land along this stretch that you're referring to that could possibly work in one of my goals, which is some affordable housing. Like what they've done here is actually, I believe that, the mayor of Carmel, as I recall, not that I'm saying 5 stories, but he went for 5 stories because he considered that still to be within human scale. But as we look down this street, and if we were to think about looking down Bengal, and if we could come up, and this is where I think form-based code could come into play. If we came up with a form-based code of what we wanted to see in this section of Bengal, and it maybe was 3 stories periodically, what makes this interesting is this is ground level. You can tell there's different heights and there's different facades. It's kind of like what Midvale is doing with their Main Street. They've been real clear on how to make it interesting. And they have some height on their Main Street. But if we could also accomplish with this land that may be attainable to do some affordable housing that would check every box in terms of walkability with the exception of transit. But who knows, maybe there's some kind of a transit. We're not terribly far from Highland Drive that has excellent transit. So I find your idea really fascinating. Thank you.
I failed to mention on the south side of the road down towards Rooted, there are some buildings that have cinder block walls or back to the buildings that or watching those things that I think if we went to them, could we do a mural on the backside of your thing? This is, you're gonna be in our arts district, that they would just jump at the thought of doing something like that. But anyway, thank you, Councilor Brown. Anyway, what are you guys?
Yeah, I just think that for an arts district, the amenities are part of the draw as well.
Yeah.
And it would have to be, and I like the variety of the amenities, but what would fit there is really the biggest consideration for us.
Yeah.
What would work.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to create. And I mean, I know we need affordable housing, but we are in Highland Heights. And also what that does to our fields, and everything else that we got there, that people utilize it an awful lot. But I like the idea. I know that the Arts Council, we've talked about it. To have a place where we can bring in cultural events would be great. Bring in artists to bring in this variety.
You mentioned, I think that the fact that the parks there could play into.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about, incorporating into that as an
Yeah.
amenity.
Yeah.
And work around that and make that part of a draw.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like the idea. I think it would add to what we're doing down the hill.
100%.
It would just make a nice little loop for people to go through, visit our city.
Yeah.
We've mentioned before that because of the schools, the park, the rec center, that Bengal should be our most walkable, bikeable road in our city. So I support that, but I think maybe that will spur some additional development further east because there are vacant lots closer to Majestic Ridge Drive and Danish Road that might be able to be developed at some point. Who knows what that is? Councilmember Burrell pointed out to me, and she walked with me, what's east of the Shell station. You know, all that dead space behind the residences there that could be used to increase walkability and bikeability. So I think, to your point, this is a great first step. I think we should explore the possibilities, see what that means. I'm all for placemaking. I think of the design district at Solano Beach, California. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it is exactly this. And that's what you do. You abandon your car, you get out, you walk. And so it is where you go when you're in that city. And I like
One of the unique things is it's really kind of in between 2 schools. So people should be thinking about the kids being around and driving slower anyway. So I think, anyway, yeah.
Well, that's why at some point, I know it's more ambitious, but to actually consider what we do further east, along there, all the way to Canyon View Elementary and the developable land that's there on the south side.
So one of the things, what do you think about the foundation? Jared, did you want to add anything? I know you've researched that a bunch and you like the thought, my private conversation of a dedicated to an arts foundation more than just a general thing, right?
Well, it's like, and Shane can chime in too, he's got more experience with them, but I think that as long as it's on public property and for a public good, I'm better with it than as long as we're not doing any benefit to any private individual or group. So
That's.
That was my concern with previous talks about doing a foundation for other items. It was very hard as how are we able to avoid being arbitrary in our assignment of those funds and where they go and who benefits from them. Where it's a public good, I think we're.
Well, I will say, one of the presentations we had at an AMC meeting a couple of years ago was from a councilman, and his name is escaping me, from Harriman. And, if memory serves me, it was Harriman that has a nonprofit organization that really generates most of their, events and cultural things for the city of Harriman. And I was very impressed with the way that he described it. That, looking at best practices, I don't know that it goes on in a whole lot of other cities, but for everything that's just been said, as long as it's, on the up and up. And again, I think it was Harriman that really had advanced that. Have you ever talked to Mayor Palmer about your idea?
Not really, but I will, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So I talked with Harriman and they are a 501c3. They're a separate entity from the
Yeah.
city now. I think they originally started into the city. I don't know the full background, but they are now a separate entity. And they receive a little bit of support from a staff member on Harriman's staff. But otherwise, they actually run their own group.
yeah.
So I don't know what the vision would be, but it is.
Well, it would be one of the tenets that I embrace, which is to make things where we can really citizen driven. And to have a 501c3 that is, preferably made up of, the citizens here in Cottonwood Heights. This might be a way to overcome our revenue challenges.
Any thoughts or guidance, Shane, that you want to add?
No, typically to form one, you would set up a nonprofit corporation, Utah Nonprofit Corporation, and then for it to you'd have to file with the IRS a form 1023, I believe. And if it's approved by the IRS, by then it becomes a tax exempt organization, and donations can be tax deductible. I think in my time as a attorney for local governmental entities, sometimes forming a separate 501c3 does not turn out well because they get away from the city and they have a life of their own and may not really conform to what the city wants them to do. There may be ways around that depending on the board composition, most likely. But anyway, that's something that sometimes happens.
It does make the budgeting and the auditing a little bit more complicated. You just have to make sure everything stays separate and individual, but it's not something that's.
So in my mind, the first step would be that, to forming that. So are we in agreement as a couple that we could request that we go down that road, at least as far as the coming back to us with what would be required and to form it and start one?
Yeah, the issue I know, and Shane can clarify this, if you dissolve that 501c3 at any point in time, that entity, those resources and everything belong to the state.
To the state,
Yeah,
yeah.
it goes back there. So I don't know if you transition from the city having that 501c3 to another entity doing it, what the repercussions will be for the city at that point in time.
Yeah, and you said Harriman started it, but then transitioned it
I
to.
would have to verify that. I think that was the discussion I had with them. I think they started it in the city and then it transitioned, had its own board. They actually have a grant that they provide for the 501c3 each year, but anybody, from what I understood, could come in and apply for that grant to meet those goals and standards. I've also seen the opposite in Sandy, where they actually absorbed the 501c3 that used to be the Arts Council. It still is, but then the city absorbed it. So we can look into that a little bit more and see how that can help.
I'd probably want to give myself a chance to, contemplate this a little bit before I think I'm ready to advance an action step. But I find this really fascinating, what you presented.
Well, I think the action step I support is bringing back some more information about what a 501c3
Yeah.
would
That
entail
would be
and
the next step.
what that would do.
Yeah.
So that's what I would support.
Okay. Is that okay?
Yep.
Give you that direction?
Anything else we can do now, it's, if we dilute it, we solve it. And yes, and everything else is back to the state.
Well, thank you all. I appreciate you indulging me, and I know, I don't claim to know everything. If there's other spots and places to consider, you know, kind of, if this is all something that you do want to do, we're open to, nothing is in stone at all, obviously,
Yeah,
so.
thank you. Great idea.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on to item E under reports, and that is a bike safety update. And so this has come about based on a lot of the legislature passed, and so Councilmember Burrell is asked to she's gonna lead a discussion for us and has some things that she'd like to help us to understand where we are better. So thanks, Councilmember Burrell.
Great, thank you. Well, I've organized this as succinctly as I can. I hope you don't mind if
So
I.
one thing, if you go up, I don't know if the microphones are gonna catch you. for
Oh,
anybody
you need me
online,
to
so
stand right
if you-
here.
The closer you are.
Okay,
you
I
can
just-
use-
Yeah, that.
I've noticed that this one microphone is not working. Did you know about that? No?
We're gonna look at it later.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's not toggling.
It's just not.
So you can point this anywhere in the room and it will go on the screen.
Oh, super, thank you. Okay, well, then maybe I'll be more comfortable if I can just sit right here, then I can see. Okay. So just I want to say that Bike Utah gave a presentation just a week ago at the WFRC Active Transportation Quarterly Meeting. And it was so excellent, I asked if I could borrow some of these slides. Can I also advance from here? No, you advance?
Yeah.
Okay, so why are bike lanes important? And there are 6 items that, you know, we can be cognizant. Statistically, there's interesting information such as it reduces vehicle and cyclist collisions by 30 to 49%. It gives predictability, which is reducing confusion and improving traffic flow. And traffic calming, it reduces vehicle speeds by narrowing the road visually for the motorist. It also increases bike commuting when people feel that they have a safe place to ride in. And as far as environmentally, of course, the more trips that are made, walking or rolling lowers emissions, improves air quality. And I thought this was an interesting finding. They didn't give us the source, but apparently cyclists tend to shop and spend more money than motorists. And we'll go to the next slide. So you might have the question in your mind, what kind of bike lanes do we use in Cottonwood Heights? And Matt Shipp is welcome to jump in and correct me, but I did ask for his input on this. I think I'm not far afield to say there's 6. And the closest slide I could find to represent that was this slide. Oh, and I know you want me over here. So, so on buffered lanes,
Top button.
it's the top button. So over here. So in Cottonwood Heights, we have 2 kinds of buffered lanes. And to make it clear, when there is a diagonally striped, usually that's 3 feet. It can vary a little bit, but that's the buffering area. And for some of our citizens, they are thinking that when they see this little lane here, it's for the bicycles to ride in. But in fact, because these markations of a bicycle, painted bicycle image, only by the MUTCD need to appear at the beginning and end of a given street or strip. So at any rate, here in Cottonwood Heights, we either have what you see here with some parking, or we have the bike lane up against the curb with no parking. So that's our first 2. We would call those buffered bike lanes. And then the next one, we have 2 different types. This here shows, the second one shows a bike lane where there is a parking area next to the curb. But in Cottonwood Heights, we also sometimes have our bike lane right up against the curb. So those are 2. And then in some cases in Cottonwood Heights, we have this, which they're calling a shoulder. And it's where there is no bicycle lane demarcated, but there is a white shoulder line for the motor vehicles. And so obviously bicyclists try to ride outside of that white line. I would emphasize in the case of all of these, debris, which sometimes cannot be seen by the motorist, but that can be seen by the bicyclist, forces these bicyclists, whether it's here, in this case, or in this case, to come over into the motor vehicle lane, again, because of concern of loose gravel, other types of debris, and in some cases, of course, vehicles or people. And then the last on-road, so again, we're only talking about on-road. So on-road, the other sixth form is what are called sharrows. That's that double arrow there. And it's where motorists are being alerted that there is no shoulder for bicyclists or lanes. So the bicycle might be right in the motorist lane. Are there any questions about what we have, or any comment, Matt, about what we have in Cottonwood Heights? Okay, go to
Now,
next.
what are their specific names for all of those, right? Or is that?
Well, you know,
Types, they're types 1, 2, and 3. They're called types.
Okay.
so now that brings us to the recent legislation, House Bill 290. And go next slide. So what does House Bill 290 do? It prohibits parking. I actually hate it when presenters read, but let's just make sure to read through this. And maybe for those that are listening in on our council meeting by audio only, House Bill 290 prohibits parking or driving within a bike lane, with exceptions. During road construction, it requires a highway authority to minimize the obstruction or provide a detour. And and then it talks about how it passed in the House and Senate. Next slide. So the purpose, it's to encourage better design. It's to educate drivers, inform drivers about bike lane safety and where not to park. It's to reduce the liability. So it provides protection for cyclists when forced into traffic because of parked vehicles. And then the comment on the purpose related to punitive enforcement is the goal is safe street design, not widespread ticketing or surveillance. And the next slide, please. So, you know, I just mentioned it, many ways to constitute a bike lane obstruction. Obviously, here's the buffer over here. And so the bike lane is here next to the curb. And obviously in this particular 2300 East, that shows 3 vehicles who are parked in the bike lane. Okay, next. So the mayor met with Bike Utah, and I thought this was so terrific that they came prepared for 3 ideas that they had related to 2300 East. And so while we're not here tonight to take any actionable steps, I think that for the council to get in the mind of an organization like Bike Utah, who is so dedicated to safety for all users, you can see that they showed how by changing the lane width, you can see in this diagram, this is supposed to represent what we currently have. We have 12-foot wide lanes. So in their 3 options that they put forward, they, in all cases, suggested making those vehicular lanes smaller. And as you can see, option 1 would be to provide parking only on one side of the street and move everything over. Option 2 provides, again, parking just on one side of the street. But what is nice about this is that the parked cars actually create a physical protection barrier for the cyclists. And then their third option is to have a dual, we call it dual movement, or movement in both directions for the cyclists off to the side, with again parked cars serving as a protection for the cyclists. And then the motorists, over in the other approximately 50% of the roadway. Are there any thoughts or observations?
How do you determine what side of the street, which residents will be allowed to park on the street?
And that's a great question. And I don't want to in any way paint the picture that I'm the expert and I'm here to, I would recommend that we have an additional work session and bring in either someone from Bike Utah or some other, person with greater expertise that can answer a great question like that.
Doesn't that create a problem for pedestrians who have to walk, who have to park on one side of the street if their residence is on the opposite side of the street?
Well, right now, they're not allowed to park on either side.
Well, I think that's the general debate. I had no idea that that's how this, and my concern is there's so many different configurations. Here I am, a city council member. I had no idea what a Shero was. I have no idea what our current.
That's why we're having this agenda item.
Well,
Just
my
make a-
point would be, I don't think we should have 5 different, I think as a city, and Mayor brought this to my attention, that Draper, they have one type.
Well, though, the important thing that, and I believe Matt Schiff would echo me on this, it should be contextual. There are many different circumstances on many different roadways, depending on the driveways, the businesses, the speed, the volume. And so while I was in the same room when Mayor Walker made the comment that when he looked at 2300 East, he goes, that's perfectly fine. That's exactly what we do in Draper. And while Draper has advanced off-road trails in a remarkable way, they've done a great job on that. I don't know that his comment should color our decision-making.
Let me just add some more context. So one of the things, when you went to the WFRC Active Transportation meeting, he called me after to talk about some of the things that were unique to us and he said, honestly, Mayor, you're not going to get your residents to understand 3 or 4 different bike lanes. You're not going to get your community to understand this is what this means. This is what this means. We have one and it works. Everybody knows it. I'm the biggest proponent of biking in the state. Like you said, he's created massive trails in the Corner Canyon area and people feel comfortable and they understand but he says, if you add more than that, you're going to confuse people and people can park on our streets. And so the most common thinking is when you see 2 lines, that a bike can ride in between those 2 lines. That's what most people think. Think about all the people that drive in our city that aren't from our city. They're not going to learn 3, 4, 5 different bike lane different options. And so
then maybe you're more in favor of something like this. But
I just think you're creating another safety problem. And that's, I'm not saying that none of us will pretend that this is easy. If you only allow parking on one side of 2300 East, you have residences on both sides and people will be jaywalking and they may not be seen. And we have exactly what you've talked about before is that when pedestrians aren't seen, they're vulnerable, they're at risk. So I don't agree with the legislation not at least allowing us to grandfather in some planning. I understand the intent behind it, but I would advocate more for let's go for uniformity. And no amount of education will overcome 3 or 4 or 5 different types of bike lane.
The unprotected human, the level of buffering, whether it's a physical curb, something like that is far superior to just a buffer painted on the roadway. But a buffer painted on the roadway is far superior to a single line. It's a matter of space. It's a matter of both the cyclist and the car having a chance to respond. Because again, coming back to the safe systems for all, one of the tenets is all humans use poor judgment at one point or another.
Absolutely.
Whether they're at the wheel of a car or a bicycle or they're walking, they're going to use poor judgment. And so I think our design needs to put the tenets of safe systems for all in the forefront. We've become an urbanized place. We're a little different than Draper. Cottonwood Heights is suburbia. Draper has a lot more open spaces and they're a little different animal. And so I think we need to use what has been provided, again, by the US Department of Transportation, and Federal Highway Administration, and the Transportation Safety Board have all endorsed the idea of the safe systems for all. And so I want to make sure that we take, a real deep dive into what it is we want for Cottonwood Heights, because it's inarguable that we all agree safety comes first. And so as we do that, and all these points that are being brought up are excellent questions and points. So this, again, in our limited time today, is to hopefully spark some of this thought. Again, I would urge council to revisit the Safe Systems for All information,
What
which
does
talks about the force of movement. And again, the speed at which vehicles are traveling, their volume, the dynamics of the roadway, how much access, is it high access, medium access, or low access? These things all come into play.
One of the things that when I think about when I see this and confusing, people don't understand the different types of crosswalks we have. Crosswalks have different rules based on the way they're painted. Everybody thinks that there's one rule for crosswalks. This creates that same type of situation, and I think that deep dive is going to be necessary to make a determination as to what will work best for the city. So I look forward.
So I agree. I wonder, I think we need some more intense discussion on what is the safest way to keep people safe, bikers, pedestrians, and what fits in our city that motorists are going to respect and adhere to, and how do we come up with that option to move people?
Well, I would just like to make the analogy that when I was a little girl, it was very controversial that seatbelts were required. And that went on for several years. No one's telling me I have to wear a seatbelt, or I'm safer if I get ejected during a crash than to wear a seatbelt. I mean, things don't happen overnight. And so suburban drivers, sure, they have the paradigm to which they're accustomed. But to me, it all comes back to human life is sacred. If it's sacred, then it's our obligation as the city council to do all we can to put safety first. People need to learn some new things. I think that it might take a little time, but I don't want to make this a matter of convenience to motorists. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So we don't want to spend a lot of time here, but there has been, I know the chief was concerned about Brighton High School pickup and drop off. This was something that I believe it was the town of Alpine tried putting in a sign that allowed for pickup and drop off at certain limited times. But it's something, again, we're not here to make a vote on tonight. But at Brighton High School, there is a place for pickup and drop off road. So just wanted to mention that. Any comment?
Well, I will just mention the unintended byproduct of that law. And by the way, the representative we met with, she's wonderful. And she's certainly open to modifications, and she gave us some ideas on how to resolve some of our concerns. But overnight, what we did is made it illegal for people to park in front of their own homes. You can't park in front. You have this, but further down on 23rd, there are people and handicapped people who count on that to move in and out, and I don't want to push them across the street. And overnight, 27th, 23rd, part of Bengal, their city or routes over the city, we designated those lanes for safety reasons, but we never intended them to be an area where people could park in front of their own homes. And so I get pictures from citizens like every day wanting me to go impound site those motorists. So I don't mean to step on your presentation, but at some point we would like some guidance on what you feel is important before. You have the right to do some to propose some legislation or
May I ask a question? Because I've been contemplating ever since I first heard this comment, weeks ago. Is it that the homeowner has decided to use their garage for a different purpose other than for motor vehicles? I don't really understand, even if they have a steep driveway, I don't understand why, if they have handicapped individuals, why they don't use their garage for the handicapped individual to get in and out of the vehicle.
Well, there's more than one example of that, but some of them are steep driveways, and those homes were built before some of these.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the driveway. I'm saying pull into their carport or their garage. I don't quite understand why they wouldn't.
Because my understanding, it's angled such that the street makes it much more convenient for them to wheel out the front door and get to the street and get into in out of the vehicle. But aside, I mean, in addition to that, just every other motor or every other resident can't have visitors, or they can't park in front of their home ever. I mean, not nighttime, daytime. This doesn't provide for just during daylight hours, or there's no provisions unless you create that in an ordinance. So just something to consider if you think that's important. I don't know that that was the intent of the legislation, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tiffany, can you advance the slide? Okay, and so the Bike Utah came up with 4 implementation tips. Here's 2 of them. And I want to credit our city manager and our communications director. They have been pushing out in Cottonwood Heights social media some education about bike safety and various information. Do you want to add anything, Jared?
We also did an email campaign, and then the chief had an article in the July newsletter about it. So we've been trying to push the information as much as we can about the new legislation. So.
Okay. And obviously there can be additional signs installed. Next slide. Design for self-enforcement, avoid placing bike lanes directly against the curb without a physical buffer, so drivers do not mistake the bike lane for parking. And redesign problem areas. Identify commonly blocked bike lanes and then redesign them to reduce violations. Can you go back to the other slide? Is there any thoughts by council members on what you would like to see in terms of the public and further education and that sort of thing?
I just think we have to consider the fact that we're not a blank slate like a lot of these other municipalities on the west side of the valley. And I mean, if you look at this diagram here, we don't have that kind of space on our streets to do a lot of these things. So we have to be real creative in whichever direction we decide to go in to make the right decision. But I don't want to get to the point where we're telling residents you can't. You have to put your car in this driveway. They're not under an HOA. And we start to do those types of things. I think we'll run into some other issues that maybe even legally that could cause us some problems. But I just want to. I look forward to the continued conversation.
Okay, well, and I'm just was gonna wrap with the last slide, a reminder that it is Utah state law that no matter what condition, motorists are to give cyclists 3 feet. And I am not going to go on any more about safe bicycle. There's many things that could be brought forward, and I'm looking forward to our continuing dedication to making our streets safer and helping to educate the public, all motorists and cyclists and pedestrians, how we can all be safer and reduce serious injury and fatality.
So let me ask a question. So Bike Utah told me that they were going to come back and do an assessment with the recommendation of what would work best on some of our roads. And it looks like they didn't. They just came up with some samples.
Yeah, this was
right?
just what he showed. He showed that
So they're
slide.
still doing it.
Yes, as far as I know, yes,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
so that'll be maybe the next step is we'll get an assessment back from Bike Utah of some more recommendations that they think would work best on 2300, 2700. So let's see what they come up with.
Great,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you for
Thanks.
that presentation. Thank you. Great, so the last item on our under reports is item F, which is pergolas, gazebos, and other open air accessory structures. And obviously, if you pay attention to the planning commission, this has come about due to some issues that have come up in our grid subdivision of G Vernay, that was talked about a little bit earlier. So, Jim, you've got some things you're ready to go over with us, and we're excited
Yeah.
to listen.
Great, thanks, Mayor. So this is just a discussion item. We're hoping to get some direction from the council on the best path forward regarding these structures, and I'll go a little background. Included in your packet was the planning commission report from the last meeting where this was brought to the commission. So a little background, this is an image from our current code that requires detached structures, so sheds, gazebos, any structure that's not attached to the house, to be set back from property lines. You can see the minimum is 3 feet, and then the code also says a minimum of 6 feet from any other structure. And the G Vernay PUD requested an amendment to this because they have a lot of smaller yards, and it's not possible to meet the 6-foot setback from the house for some of those open structures, gazebos. And I've got a few photos I'll share. So it went to the commission on the 16th of July. They denied the request, not because they didn't like it, but because they thought it would be more fair to explore a text amendment that would apply citywide. So not to only grant the exception to this specific PUD, but to say, hey, well, if this is an issue, let's see if it could apply citywide for other properties that may have the same scenario. So for some context, these are the current definitions for what these structures are. So gazebo, pergola, I'm not going to read them, but we currently don't differentiate setbacks for these types of structures versus a garage that's detached or some other shed. Here are a few examples, and these are photos that were submitted by the applicant. So you can see this top left photo is a covered, I guess, awning structure that's near the home. You can see it's not attached to the house, so it violates that 6-foot separation requirement in the current code. All of these do in reality. The top right one is like a pergola type structure. So again, there's not a lot of space for them to meet that 6-foot separation. So if the council's interested, planning staff can explore an amendment that would modify that setback between structures, between houses and these types of open structures where they're not walled or enclosed, to allow for some type of a scenario like this in residential zones. We did go over that with the fire department as well as the building department. They didn't have any issues as long as they weren't enclosed, or, you know, once they include fire features or things like that, there could be some additional requirements, but it's strictly a zoning standard. It's not tied to the building code in any way for these types of structures. So is that something the council is interested in pursuing on a citywide level, or if maybe not citywide, other guardrails or parameters that would make you feel comfortable moving forward?
I'm
Something
interested
like
for
that.
sure. I would love to know what you think, Jim, the intent is. Like, for example, what would be the intent of the existing ordinance? What's the purpose?
Yeah, so the intent now is, I think really is drafted to address enclosed structure, so a detached garage, and it's mostly
The
building
residential
code
Building code that really
Right.
kind of.
Yeah, it
sets
would be
that
building
6-foot
code.
separation.
to minimize fires from spreading from one structure to another. These types of structures are open, so they don't, I mean, their walls wouldn't catch on fire, so there's less risk for a fire to transfer to another structure. So I think it was just something that wasn't considered when the original code was adopted.
Okay.
And there are quite a few cities that do exempt decks or other open air structures from specific setback standards.
So I had a few conversations with the G Vernay residents, and you know, one of the residents, I asked him, well, how big is your lot? 1/10 of an acre. So one of the things in Giverny that was unexpected for a number of the people that bought lots, the houses were built out over about, I think, an 8-year period of time. And so you can see in this picture over here, it appears to be taken from the lot directly behind this owner. And the grade steps up quite a bit. And so this homeowner, for instance, is like one of the homeowners I've talked to where he said, when we bought and built the house, we were under the information from the builder that there was not going to be a big step up in grade. But when they moved the earth around for us to be able to build several years ago, they pushed it over here. And then when a house was finally built there several years after we built our house, they allowed all that earth to remain there and the grade up significantly high. So he said, if I don't have some kind of pergola, I have people peering down on me, either into my bedroom windows or when we're on the patio. So it's been a challenging, I will say I have empathy for those that bought those expensive homes. I think the starting price even 8 years ago was nearly $800,000. So I've also talked to a few people from the Planning Commission, one of whom thought it was inequity, it lacked equity to allow for any special text amendment within Giverny unless we're going to do it citywide. So I'm happy that as I understand it, I just want to make sure I understand that the Planning Commission is advocating that we do a text amendment that would apply citywide, no matter what size the lot.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Well, that would be what we would determine. So I think they specifically mentioned the R18 zone because that's the most compatible with this specific development. But in all reality, it would be any residential lots that are maybe constrained like this, or that maybe aren't, to where there's, a good rule of thumb is to ask why a rule is the way it is. And if we don't have a good answer, then we explore why we have the rule, right? So I think this is one of those circumstances that if there's not a great reason to maintain that 6-foot separation between structures with these types of structures, then.
And then also there's the
Yeah.
setback issue. So it's not just the distance. Oh my goodness, did I do that?
Oh, that was me.
Oh man,
Yeah.
am I doing
So-
that?
no.
Am I-
No, that's me. So this is like an aerial
Right, so
perspective.
for instance, if this is the open air pergola, it also has to meet the 3-foot. So if you go back to the other slide, are these pergolas meeting the 3-foot setback? Like here, is that 3 feet there, do you think, or?
The bottom left isn't, look at that where it is on the
They're
fence line.
they're still gonna have to maintain that 3 feet no matter what, though, even with an open air, because if you get any closer to a property line, then the building code requires you to have a fire rated wall.
That's
Right.
so I
Actually,
listened to
closer
the
5
entire
feet.
planning commission discussion on
Yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
that's what I remember them talking about specifically is, I think right now, if shed that's less than 200 square feet, doesn't even have to be permitted.
No,
Correct.
So
but it still has to meet code.
it still has to meet code. If it's not permitted, we don't even know. It'll
Unless
be
it's
built right
permitted,
up against
right.
the property line. So, yeah, definitely in favor of what they came, their conclusion was, we really need to look at this more broadly, and the open air structures should be different than a shed
Yeah.
or an ADU in
Mhm.
the way we treat them because of the fire.
That's exactly, you explained it better than I did, for sure. That's exactly what I'm interested in looking at.
And of course, if our chief pilgrim has any additional comments, my key thing is
I
safety.
think what you already heard from the fire department, I think
Yeah.
is good. Those are low risk compared to other things, so I think as long as that's addressed, and it's on the fire code, then.
Right, and I think this request would help several folks in this specific PUD. A lot of the structures are just not gonna work out with how they're constructed. There's no way to draft a code that would allow for some of these, but the majority of them would meet those standards, and I don't know specifically what percentage that would be. But it would also allow other homes in the entire city to have these types of amenities as well. So it sounds like everyone's interested.
But we're just talking about the setback between the structure and the house, right? Not changing the setback from the fence to the structure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have no issue with it at all. I mean,
Well, and distinguishing between a shed and a.
exactly.
Yes,
Yeah.
be more clear about.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep, absolutely.
I did have a constituent ask, I thought it was a good question. What if the given pergola was made of steel versus of wood? Would that matter in any way to this conversation we're having?
Well.
No, I don't think
then you get
so.
into the equity thing. It's. Yeah, I just think that doesn't seem to be an issue. When you get to putting a roof on it and you have a gazebo versus a.
Enclosures and.
Yeah, then you start to get into some concern, but just a regular pergola. Don't see an issue.
Agree. I think we're interested in moving forward.
Okay.
With,
Yeah, we'll prepare something and bring it back.
Great. Will that go to planning first or to us?
It would go to the planning commission first.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I guess we could bring a draft to you to look at before it goes to the commission if you'd like to see something. Otherwise, the standard would be to take it to the planning commission for a public hearing and then the council for formal action.
Okay. I think we're probably okay with it going to planning first, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Thank you for that. Okay, we'll move on to item 4, which is a review of calendars and upcoming events. So on Wednesday, August 20th, tomorrow, I've made that sound like a really long one. Less than 24 hours, here at City Hall, we have our senior social. And reminded me what we're doing. We're doing that.
Fine.
Hey,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, canine demonstration. You
Hopefully they're showing up.
doing that? Yeah, great.
They'll be there. You'll be entertained and impressed.
Is that
Okay.
here? Is that?
Yeah.
It'll be here. You'll be able to.
Anybody want to put bike suit on? Just-
Too small.
No, they told me, don't you remember Highland already volunteered?
Okay.
Don't worry, they can big pad on.
What's the whole?
Up with Bruce.
The dog hits me up on the ground.
Well, we said we'd use a smaller dog.
Yeah. Saturday, August
Gonna go.
23rd, this week, from 9:30 to 11:30, is the bark in the park in Mountview Park. I get to choose the dog that looks the most like me, which is Frodo. You know.
What an honor.
Friday, September 26th. Oh, I missed one. Sorry. Friday, September 12th at 3 p.m. The mural ribbon cutting at Golden Hills Park. Yeah, for that great mural. that
And
looked good.
the recognition of the Edie Wright Memorial as well. I'll be right after that, so.
Great.
Can I add something for the council to put on your calendars, please? And that's, Paul Brenneman's retirement will be from 1 to 3 that same day.
Same day.
On Friday, September 12th.
1 to 3.
And Dave Mears is Thursday,
The 4th.
the 4th.
Okay, will you?
I thought it was gonna be the 5th. We'll figure that out, because I need to verify that
Send
date.
it out, the council can
Send it all over.
Yeah, I thought it was the 5th.
It's the fifth and Paul's 12th.
I thought it was the 5th, but Dave said it was the 4th, so I gotta go verify with Scott when he
Okay.
gets back.
So Dave Mira is the 5th?
Yeah.
Well,
Fourth and fifth, we're not sure.
He's checking.
Gotta check on it. I'll send it out then.
Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Friday, September 26th, from 5 to 7:30, the community block party at Hillside Plaza. Do you know what we have planned for that?
There's a children's maker market, I think Sydney's been planning it, so she's been working to try to get that there. Food trucks like we did last time, and then different
That
vendors.
entertainment is gonna come, the
Yeah,
I
the
can pull up
Sax
the
Man.
flyer.
Stacks Man, yeah,
Well, he's been invited,
Bike
I'm not
demo.
sure.
okay.
A bike.
No, I think he was
Um,
excited about
I
it.
don't know if the bikes are coming this year. Well, check with Sydney. Check.
Here's the flyer that Sydney sent me today.
Oh, yeah, bike safety rodeo.
Awesome,
Chalk art contest, so get your chalk out.
yeah. Sydney does a great job.
Jim's doing the face painting, so.
Uh-oh.
And the last item is a Friday, October 24th, the Monster Mash from 5 to 7 at the Cottonwood Heights Rec Center. We do have an item to discuss in a closed session concerning possible litigation. And so I will entertain a motion to leave our work session and enter into a closed session.
So we don't adjourn the work session, we just leave it. So we leave the work session and go into a closed session for the
Closed
purpose
session.
of
Possible litigation.
possible litigation.
I made that motion. Councilmember Burrell or Councilmember Hill.
All in favor, say aye.
Day.
Aye,
Aye.
okay, okay, thank you. And this can